Well, and then the vulnerability that it takes on your part to say, gosh, here's where I got stuck. Or in different words, here's where I tried and failed. Anytime I think we're expressing, oh, what have we not succeeded in accomplishing? It's a little vulnerable, right? So he's got to make himself a safe spot for you to say, I tried this way, this way, this way, and failed, and now I'm stuck. And he's like, hey, I got you.
Welcome to What If with Leslie Grandy and part 2 of my conversation with Mark Canlis. In the first episode, we explored stewardship, ritual, culture, and the idea of hospitality as invitation. But as the conversation continued, we moved into something even broader. What happens to human connection, creativity, and emotional experience in a world increasingly mediated by technology? One of the things that struck me most in this conversation is that Mark does not see hospitality as performance. He sees it as a relationship. And that perspective leads to a fascinating discussion about emotional labor, vulnerability, trust, play, and the role leaders have in creating environments where people feel permission to fully show up as themselves. We also explore why deeply human experiences may become more valuable as AI becomes more embedded in our daily lives. Mark shares why he believes authentic connection, craftsmanship, and emotional presence cannot simply be automated away. What unfolds is less a conversation about restaurants and more a conversation about humanity, leadership, and the responsibility leaders have to create environments where people feel seen, trusted, and invited to contribute. I hope you enjoy part 2 of my conversation with Mark Canlis. But, I think about hospitality, and I know that people can be exhausting. They can be unreasonable and demanding and emotional, and
Isn't
they can
it glorious?
yeah.
And exhausting.
But whether they're your employees or your customers, there can be a time where you just, I think, get worn out by the service business and the need to be a servant leader even. So when you find yourself kind of headed in that direction before maybe you go off a cliff, what do you do to sort of recharge your own creativity and to get yourself personally back to the place where you feel other-centered? Because sometimes being other-centered can really just be a lot of burden to bear, right? A lot of other people's weight to carry. And so what do you do?
It's interesting. So much is made in the service industry of how tire making it can be. And to be clear, it's work. It is work. But a little bit of, I think it's like saying, what do you do to restore yourself after a good workout? That's to say, if you go to the gym and you just have the best workout ever, you stretch and maybe you get a little playlist going. Maybe like there's someone across the gym that's encouraging you. There's like this verbal affirmation or this accountability in some sense, or maybe they're helping you get a personal best or something. And then you like run it out and get this great time. I don't know. After a great workout, you are exhausted. You are spent. You are done for. And also fully alive, fully restored. I don't know what's happening, all the endorphins or something, but like you're in such a good place. Someone's like, how you doing today? And you're like sucking on your smoothie and you're like, oh, I'm having a great day. Really? Why didn't you say, I'm exhausted? So I think in a restaurant, you have this both, that when it's done really well, you're exhausted and also you're fully alive. You feel like, oh man, I just took my humanity for a run and we crushed tonight. Like parts of it were hard. Those hills were hard. That guest on table 8, that was such a bore and just needs a therapist, not a dinner. It's like, that was tricky. Like those are the hills we climb, right? And there's all these glorious moments for like, you come around the corner and like the sun is coming down and it blows up this tree bright orange and like somebody's barbecue in the backyard and there's just this sweetness and you're just running past it all. There's that. There's all of that in a restaurant, and there's all that in a good run or in a good workout. So I think that there's, yes, it can be exhausting, and also it fills you up. It wakens you up to your humanity. It reminds you of what we're all doing on the planet. Exhausting is reading the news. Exhausting is not having hope. Exhausting is doing work where you're sort of saying, what's this all for? I think to work in a place that says, look, here's what we're going to do today. We're going to remind people that it's okay to turn toward strangers, difference, otherness, uncertainty, that which is foreign to us, that which is unknown to us, that which doesn't make sense to us. We're going to spend all day cooking for that idea, prepping for that idea, ironing tablecloths so that maybe that idea comes alive in some way. And then I'm going to give you permission just to go out and try it. And that, though it be exhausting, also restores you and fills you up and charges your battery. And you sleep well.
That's really fascinating. I'm wondering just philosophically, as you see what's happening with AI and technology, do you think your kinds of experience becomes more in demand? Do you think people will gravitate more towards an environment that's so people-centered? And so you're not really feeling threatened in the way that you talk about what Burger King is doing with its AI and where AI is going in hospitality. And what you actually see is, like you say, a distancing that technology has created between people connections, or at least a disintermediation of those people connections. Do you think that people are aware enough that they want to fulfill that personal connection that Canlis provides?
They are. They may not have the words for it, but I know they're aware of it, because when people leave, the stuff they're saying is greater than the sum is greater than the parts, or whatever that mathematical axiom is. They leave saying things that don't make sense. That was the best meal of my life. I was like, no, it wasn't. The best meal of your life was a piece of pizza you ate in college at 3 a.m, or was, going down to Single Thread or the French Laundry, that famous restaurant in Paris. But what they're really saying is, oh, I feel so restored. I feel so connected to. I needed this in ways I didn't know. Wait, something about tonight really struck a chord with me. That's what's going on. And we see it nonstop. We see it in our staff. We see it in our guests. So AI, what a wild west. What a crazy world out there. No, I don't feel threatened by it. Not in the work, not in the work that we do. I think there will always be a demand for relationship. There will always be a demand for connection and authentic relationship, authentic connection. There'll always be a demand for the craft that we are tradesmen in. That's what fine dining is. It is a craft, and you have to pour mind, body, and soul into it in order for it to work. And I don't think AI is going to be able to. It can help us in that. I don't think it's coming for my job anytime soon.
And again, I think it's a question of the experience. It survived several technological waves, right? And I don't think there was really any necessarily impactful version of what your brand had to endure because of them.
No, Canlis adapts. And by the way, so do we as a species. This is our jam zone. This is what we do. We play and we create and we experience and we feel. And then we wake up tomorrow and we figure out another way to do that. And so I think AI can actually play an important role in moving things forward. It could also go off the rails. I'm not an expert in it by any means, but I think that what is being rediscovered with a lot of people sort of exploring AI is their own ability to create, their own ability to play, their own need for it. Now that sort of we have knowledge at your fingertips in this way, it almost frees us up to say, oh, hold on a second. What do I bring to the table? And the honest truth is we bring a lot. So I think you're going to see an increased demand for that which is authentic, that which is handmade, that which is craft or tradesmanship, and we live in that space. Restaurants live in that space. Square in the...
Yeah, you also, I think when you had talked about earlier things like your last meal with a grandmother or your last meal as a childless parents and these moments, there's a lot of emotion around those moments. And I think emotion seems to play a large part also in what you're sensitive to that you need to support in those moments, right? Because those are the examples that you bring to the forefront are the ones that seem to be deeply and richly emotional.
There's a meme out there. There's the word has gone out that fine dining is dead or dying. And I take that personally. To your point, the emotions are not dead or dying. And the need to have those emotions cared for are not going away. And if maybe fine dining is misunderstood, fine dining is the place you go to that can safeguard or cherish those moments in ways that you trust. That's what's happening, is that every one of my guests, they're all very different from one another, but they have a common thread. Tonight needs to matter. They all walk in the door with that same thing pressed heavy on their hearts. Tonight needs to matter. I hope the restaurant gets it right. I hope the restaurant only knew that my sister's only in town for 1 week and we're just sort of rebuilding our relationship. I hope the restaurant understands that I really want to impress my client, and I'm a little bit nervous. I feel like I'm over my skis. I don't even deserve to be here, but I'm going to try to pull it off. If the restaurant only knew that I'm super nervous to meet this girl, if the restaurant only knew that I feel out of place here, and yet I need them to. So that's what's going on. That need, that very human thing, that's not going anywhere.
No, I totally agree with that. As I want to step back a little just for a second before we wrap up, you really understand a culture of creativity, a culture that really explores how it can expand its employees' capacity to succeed. What would you tell other small business owners? You have a retail store or a yoga store, or maybe you're a realtor. What would you tell them as kind of the tenets to building the kind of culture that you've built, and what to think about or focus on if they're trying to, to end up with the kind of outcome, both from a customer experience perspective, but also from an employee experience perspective that you've been able to achieve?
Oh, I think that would tell them they're more free than they can possibly imagine to follow their hearts right into business. And somehow we believe this lie that we go to work and we cut out the personal parts of ourselves that really matter. And I don't. There was very strong evidence to suggest that that's a bad idea. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that the way forward is to bring your wholehearted, full self into the workplace. And I think in order to do that, the owners, need to do that before they invite their staff to do it. That's to say, if you want to go skinny dipping with a bunch of friends, the best way to do it is to take off your clothes and jump in and say, come on in, the water's fine. But if you stand on the dock with a bunch of people and tell them to get naked and jump in, that's creepy. That's a little weird, right? So you have to lead with that vulnerability. You have to lead with the thing that says, hey, I own this little shop, and this is who I am, and this is who I'm becoming, and this is what I'm trying to do with my little store. And God, I hope you'll join me in that mission. Will you join me in that? This is what we're doing here. And I don't care if it's a restaurant or a little dry cleaner store or the little shop around the corner. I think just be honest about it, be clear about it. That clarity is kindness to every one of your employees. Hey, this is who I am. This is who I'm hoping to become. These are all the things I've not yet achieved. Here's all the ways I've failed to date. And but tomorrow I'm going to wake up with this big desire on my heart, and I'm going to pursue it fully. And will you join me in that? That's leadership. And there's so much freedom to do that. And for some reason, we believe this sneaky little lie that says that we can't show up that way. And I think Canlis is a hypothesis, an experiment saying, is that true? Maybe that's not true.
You're listening to What If with Leslie Grandy. If you want to activate your imagination and build your creative muscles, I've put together some free resources, including webinars, downloadable content, bonus book content, and even a GPT to help you achieve your goals. Access these free tools to start asking what if today at lesliegrandy.com/resources. Yeah, so this takes me to my last question, which what if we fast forward to when you're ready to retire? Okay, from whatever happens over the rest of your 50 years of work. Just kidding.
Is that an option? I didn't know that was an option. Wait, hold on a second.
What do you want your legacy to be? What would make you happy when you looked back on what you've accomplished?
We talk about this all the time in the restaurant. That's the same answer that I would give an employee if they turned my favorite interview question around on me. When I asked them, who are you hoping to become because you work at Canlis? A great response would be, X, Y, and Z. And hey, Mark, who are you hoping to become? And those values that we state, that award that we're giving out, that's just a statement of who I'm not yet, but want to be. Our values are aspirational. It's not a list of things we've accomplished. I hope somebody says, oh, that guy, he was trustworthy. He had a soft heart and he lavished it on people. And he generously just sent it out there. He knew the world didn't revolve around him. He wasn't selfish. He was other-centered. Those values that we, those are the things that we as owners are hoping that not in spite of our work, but because of our work, will become more of in the future. And it's not my responsibility to make this restaurant last another year. The world doesn't need another restaurant. It's not my responsibility to make sure I have something to pass to my kids. It's my responsibility to live a life that my kids could say, oh man, this is who my dad was. They don't need a restaurant. They need someone to walk ahead and say, hey, you guys, this is how I try to do it. And maybe that'll make an impact. That's it. It's who we are way more than what we do.
That's so awesome. It's super inspirational. I knew I would enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Thank you, Mark, for the generosity of your time today.
It's such a joy to talk through it with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you had a question for me about velocity, I think, that we didn't get to, but if you'd love to throw one at me, just because I know from our book launch event, you weren't comfortable without asking me a question as well.
Here's my question for you.
Fair play.
No, here's my question for you. Okay, so, and this is, I hope this is honoring of the work that you're doing and not throwing a curveball. My question was, is it the speed of creativity or the momentum of creativity that we need to focus on? Or is it the permission in the first place to be creative? And so that is really, I wonder if unnecessarily, somehow in adulthood, we've distanced ourselves from play and creativity. And I wonder if there is not just a need to say, hey, permission to play, permission to be creative, because I can't imagine divorcing my work self from my playful creative self. In fact, the closer they are aligned, the better work goes, to be totally honest. And so I just was wondering what you thought about that. Like, do you feel like we have enough invitation in the workplace to truly be creative, to truly play in that way? Or have we edited that out, perhaps by accident? Or
there's two parts of the question, and I think they're both true. As I've learned to say, both things can be true. I think momentum, the velocity part of this is momentum with direction. And I think it's really important for people to understand that speed of idea generation isn't the goal. And the way you get momentum in a particular direction is to break free from organizational gravity, emotional gravity, right? The kinds of things that hold you back from having permission to create. So from my perspective, the reason it's a goal is very much like in physics, escape velocity is about getting away from gravitational pull to achieve a new trajectory. I think one of the reasons people aren't creative is that gravitational pull. And so the reason that I put velocity as a goal is it would be, in the same way that it is in physics, evidence that you are breaking the gravitational pull around our cognitive biases or our organizational biases that really hold us back from taking risks or exploring new things. And so the consequence of being able to be creative would be that you've broken through that pull, that gravitational field. But I think you're right. And so as I was saying, both can be true. I think part of the reason people can't achieve velocity is because they don't feel that they have permission. And so with the book, and there's actually a chapter in the book is, saying go play. I absolutely agree that what the book was intended to do was to allow people to access personally their creative spirit, which then they could bring into an organization or into their relationships and feel comfortable with what that might disrupt or what that might create, right? And so it isn't so much about speed of ideas, right, as sort of purpose to the momentum.
Yeah. Right. And then I wonder if, as leaders, the onus is on us if we could just dial down the gravity. Like
totally. That's exactly what it is.
As if it were on a dial, but wouldn't that be cool if we could just be like, ooh, and dial that thing back so that someone didn't have to work so hard to break through.
Totally. That's what I think is exactly, I think that's how they're connected. I'm trying to express the fact that without breaking that gravitational pull, you'll never hit that capacity on a repeatable basis in a systematic way. You won't be able to maintain any momentum because, to your point, if somebody doesn't feel they're able to take an intelligent risk, or if somebody doesn't feel like they could ask, why do we do it that way? Can't we do it a different way? That will prevent that momentum from happening. So I think both are true. I think momentum with direction comes from releasing people from that organizational gravity. A lot of times leaders also create that sort of gravitational pull by being authoritative as opposed to serving the greater goal of the brand, the business, the customer, and their employees. They're much more decisive. And so people think, well, they know what they want to do. I'm just not being asked my opinion. And so that organizational gravity comes from, again, not giving people the space to ask those kind of what if questions.
Can I flip your question back on you then? What would you say to those leaders out there what would be just an easy piece of advice to hold on to that says, gosh, I'm raising my hand like, oh man, that's my organization. I'm stuck in the gravitational pull. I can't break free of it. What is there?
Yeah.
What advice? You get to talk to a lot of leaders. You've seen the best ones do this. What advice would you say? Oh, here, take this with you. This one's a freebie. Put it in your pocket.
Yeah. So to me, one of my early leaders, very early on, when I was just getting started in technology, I would come in and I would talk to him about a problem I had. And he would say, don't ever bring me problems without a solution. And I would say to him, but then it wouldn't be a problem if I had a solution. He said, that's not what I mean. Unless I understood how you thought about solving the problem, I don't have your experience or your knowledge of the details. So I want to know where you got stuck solving the problem. Not that there's a problem, but that you attempted with what you know to try to solve it. And you don't feel good about that solution, but that's a better starting place than I have a problem. And so the idea that what was underlying that to me and what I think was the most helpful was it acknowledged that I actually knew something about the situation that might be helpful to him coming up with a solution. And it acknowledged that we were going to have a conversation about why my solution wasn't going to work, right? And so what he was trying to do was not be the decider of what we should do, but be able to have an intelligent conversation about whether or not I've thought about the risks or the opportunities holistically enough since I lived it day to day. And to me, that was the biggest aha moment was, how have you thought about solving this problem and why didn't that work? Isn't a failure to solve the problem. It's educating me.
It's educating.
Right?
It's valuable.
Right. Super valuable insight. So when he said it to me at first, I was like, well, that's stupid. But over time, and the more I've gotten to know him, it taught me that he wanted me to bring learning to him, not just problems. Not that he wasn't going to help me solve it, but that if I hadn't given him some amount of effort I put towards solving it, he'd wonder how important it was to solve anyway.
Well, and then the vulnerability that it takes on your part to say, gosh, here's where I got stuck. Or in different words, here's where I tried and failed. Anytime I think we're expressing, oh, what have we not succeeded in accomplishing? It's a little vulnerable, right? So he's got to make himself a safe spot for you to say, I tried this way, and failed, and now I'm stuck. And he's like, hey, I got you. Let's break through that together.
Let's talk about it. Let's see why you didn't consider these other options. And now it's a conversation as opposed to I'm dumping a pile of poo on your desk. Please help me get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just, again, from a leadership perspective, it's not inviting, right? It ends up not actually inviting that person to grow into solving problems. And so I really feel like that invitation, to use your word, was a really big eye opener for me, which is I got to go do some work here, some groundwork before I come in, because then that is a much more fruitful conversation.
I love it. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, no, thanks. I hope I answered the question. I know, like I said, I felt like I have to make space for him to answer because I know that's his thing. He wants to be able to ask questions as much as answer them.
I'd stay on the phone with you all day. There's a lot to talk about in this space.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. I really thank you for joining me today.
Leslie, cheers. I hope we get to talk soon.
You too. Bye. Thank you for listening to What If with Leslie Grandy. If you're interested in learning more about creative leadership, or you're just looking for a way to build your creative self-confidence and agency, check out my book, Creative Velocity, at lesliegrandy.com/book and start turning your ideas into action.